Imagine for a moment that your whole life with someone is a lie. That for 8 years, your partner has been secretly ashamed of you, inventing excuses to leave you at home, while they swan around with someone else, who they introduce to everyone as their partner. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of a bloody strong woman who uncovered the most brutal truth about her marriage. And what she did with that discovery will absolutely floor you. This is a story of revenge, a massive transformation, and a public showdown that brought the reputations of Sydney's elite crashing down. Clara Evans always had a gut feeling that something was wrong, but she could never quite put her finger on it. On a chilly November morning in Sydney, she looked out the window of her swanky penthouse in Darlinghurst. Watching well-dressed business types scurry towards their offices, she felt the familiar weight of the loneliness that had been her companion for years. The flat was immaculate, decorated with the same discreet taste her husband, Oliver Davis, always demanded. Italian designer furniture, neutral tones, all coordinated to reflect the status of a successful exec. But Clara felt like a stranger in her own home, a temporary guest in a hotel that was way too expensive for her. Oliver, 42, had left early, as usual. He was a managing partner at Davis & Associates, a consulting firm that advised Australia's biggest corporations. Tall, with perfectly styled gray hair, and always dapper in his custom-made suits from Martin Place. Oliver was the kind of man who commanded respect the moment he walked into a room. Clara, 33, was the complete opposite. She came from a small country town in rural Queensland and had moved to Sydney at 20 to study languages. That's where she met Oliver at a graduation party. He was already professionally set, and she was a starry-eyed young woman, fascinated by city life. Their romance was a fairy tale. Oliver wooed her with a sophistication she'd never experienced. Dinners at exclusive restaurants, weekends away on the Gold Coast, expensive gifts that made her blush. Clara felt like Cinderella, a simple country girl elevated to a world of luxury and refinement that had always seemed out of reach. They married 2 years later in a small but elegant ceremony. Clara wore a simple dress she'd bought with her savings, and Oliver paid for the reception at a lush vineyard for 50 guests, all from his social and professional circles. In the first few years, Clara still hoped to fit into Oliver's world. She studied etiquette, learned about fine wines, and tried to get into contemporary art. But slowly, Oliver started to discourage her from attending social events. "You'd get bored, love," he'd say, every time they received invitations to charity galas or business dinners. "They're pretty formal, full of business talk you wouldn't get. You'd rather stay home with your books, wouldn't you?" And Clara believed him, or wanted to believe him. She accepted his excuses because the alternative, that her own husband was ashamed of her, was too unthinkable to confront. Clara specialized in technical and literary translation, working freelance for publishing houses. It was a job she could do from home, alone, without interrupting Oliver's social schedule. Little by little, Clara became invisible, even to herself. That November morning, while tidying Oliver's study, Clara found something that would change her life forever. A golden envelope forgotten among some business contracts. It was an invitation to the annual Art Foundation Gala, one of Sydney's most prestigious events, held at the Museum of Contemporary Art. The invitation was dated 3 weeks ago. Clara remembered that night perfectly. Oliver had said he had a boring business dinner and had come home at 3 in the morning. With her heart hammering, Clara grabbed her laptop and looked up the event. Immediately, dozens of photos of Sydney's high society popped up. Photos of elegant couples, dazzling women in gowns, distinguished men. And then she saw him. Oliver, radiant in his impeccable tux, with his arm wrapped around the waist of a woman Clara had never seen. A spectacular blonde, about 28, in a red dress that cost more than Clara's annual wage. She was tall, slender, with the kind of polished beauty that only money can buy. The caption hit her like a punch to the gut. Businessman Oliver Davis and his companion, model and digital influencer, Saskia Benning, at the Sydney Art Foundation Gala. Clara frantically clicked on more photos. Oliver and Saskia toasting with champagne. Oliver whispering something in her ear while she laughed. Oliver proudly introducing her to other couples in his social circle. Clara's hands trembled as she opened Saskia Benning's Instagram. The profile, with thousands of followers, was a showcase of obscene luxury. Photos on yachts in the Whitsundays, trips to Bali, Chanel handbags, sports cars, dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants. In several recent photos, Clara recognized details that absolutely crushed her. The Rolex watch that Oliver had said a client gave him, the pearl necklace that mysteriously appeared in her jewelry box 6 months ago, when Oliver said it was a surprise anniversary gift. The exotic flowers that arrived at their house by mistake from the florist. He was buying it all for Saskia, with the money that should have been theirs. Clara continued her investigation with the obsession of someone who needs to know the full extent of their own humiliation. She discovered that Oliver and Saskia frequented Sydney's most exclusive restaurants together. She found photos of them at events that happened while Oliver was supposedly on business trips. A weekend in the Blue Mountains, another on the Gold Coast. The worst discovery came when Clara found an interview with Saskia in a glossy magazine, published 2 months earlier. In the article, Saskia spoke vaguely but revealingly about her life. When asked about her relationship, Saskia replied, "Oliver and I are very happy. He's been in the process of a divorce for almost a year, but he's a very loyal man who cares about his ex-wife and wants to do things properly so as not to hurt her." Clara read those words, feeling her world collapse. Oliver had told Saskia they were separated. For over a year, while sleeping in the same bed as Clara, kissing her good morning before going to work, and making love to her on weekends, he was building a whole parallel life. It wasn't just an affair. It was a serious, public, recognized relationship, at least to everyone except Clara. She ran to the bathroom and threw up. Then she sat on the cold floor, crying until she had no tears left. When she finally got up and looked in the mirror, she saw a woman she didn't recognize. Her eyes were puffy, her face streaked, and she had the expression of someone who had just found out her whole life had been a lie. What would you do if you were in Clara's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments. Oliver came home at 7 p.m., as usual. He kissed Clara's cheek absent-mindedly, as usual. He asked what was for dinner, as usual. It was as if nothing had changed, as if Clara's world hadn't just fallen to pieces. During dinner, Clara watched him as if seeing him for the first time. The calculated way he talked about his day, carefully omitting any detail that could connect him to Saskia. The way he avoided her gaze. The way his phone buzzed constantly with messages he'd check discreetly, always with a little smirk on his lips. After dinner, Oliver said he needed to review some contracts in his study and closed the door. Clara knew he was talking to Saskia. That night, lying next to the man who had been deceiving her, Clara made a decision that would change everything. She wouldn't confront Oliver right away. First, she would unearth the entire truth, and then she would make Oliver pay for every humiliation, every lie, for every moment he made her feel inadequate while he built a fairy tale life with another woman. The following days were a descent into the hell of progressive discovery. Clara became a detective of her own life, and every new piece of evidence was like another deep stab into her already shattered self-esteem. She started by checking their shared bank statements, which she'd always had access to, but had never used because she blindly trusted him. What she found turned her stomach. In the last 18 months, Oliver had spent almost $120,000 on client entertainment and business trips. But Clara was able to trace many of these transactions. Dinners for two, shopping on Pitt Street Mall at Prada and Gucci, weekends at luxury hotels, always booked for a couple. There was even a $25,000 transaction at a high-end jeweler. On the same date, Saskia had posted a photo of a diamond bracelet with the caption, "Special gift from someone special." But the financial discoveries were just the beginning. Clara found a search history on their shared iPad. Searches like romantic hotels in the Blue Mountains, jewelry for a 28-year-old, and how to end a marriage without losing money. The last search was just 2 months earlier. Oliver wasn't just cheating on her. He was planning to leave her. One afternoon, when Oliver said he had an all-day meeting, Clara decided to follow him. She took a taxi to his office. Oliver left at 2 in the afternoon, not by car, but on foot. Walking toward the city, Clara followed, keeping her distance. Oliver entered a classic cafe, and Saskia was already waiting for him. Clara hid behind a column and watched a scene that completely destroyed her. Oliver and Saskia greeted each other with a passionate kiss. They sat at a reserved table, clearly regulars. Clara could see them talking animatedly. Oliver was laughing in a way she hadn't heard him laugh in years. His eyes lit up when he looked at Saskia. He held her hand across the table, playing with her fingers, treating her with a tenderness Clara had forgotten existed. At one point, Oliver took a small box from a luxury jeweler out of his pocket and handed it to Saskia. She opened it with a look of genuine ecstasy and put what looked like a ring on her right ring finger. It wasn't an engagement ring. After all, Oliver was still married, but it was clearly a promise of a future. Clara watched for almost 2 hours. She saw how Oliver treated Saskia like a queen, how he hung on her every word, how he looked at her with an adoration he had never shown Clara. It was obvious that he was deeply in love, and that, in a way, hurt more than the betrayal itself. Clara could have dealt with a soulless sexual affair, but Oliver had fallen in love with another woman, and had built with her the kind of relationship Clara had always dreamed of having with him. In the taxi home, Clara cried silently, watching the Sydney streets pass by the window. The city that had once been synonymous with her dreams now seemed like a graveyard of lost illusions. That night, Oliver came home at 7:30, half an hour later than usual. He said the meeting had dragged on, and he was exhausted. They ate dinner in silence, as had become their custom. Clara watched him discreetly and noticed the signs she had always ignored. The way he checked his phone, always turning the screen down when someone messaged him. The way he immediately showered to relax from the workday. The way his clothes sometimes smelled of women's perfume, which he explained away as a client's or colleague's scent. After dinner, Oliver said he needed to work late. Clara went to the bedroom and pretended to be asleep. Around 11 at night, she heard Oliver talking in a low voice on the phone in his study. She got out of bed quietly and crept to the door. "Oh no, you know it's not like that," Oliver was whispering. "It's complicated. Clara, she's fragile. If I ask for a divorce now, she might have a meltdown. You don't know her. She's completely dependent on me." There was a pause. "Of course I want to be with you officially. You're the woman of my life, but I need to do this the right way. Gradually, she needs to get used to the idea." Another pause. "I know it's hard for you too, but babe, you deserve more than having to hide me. But think about what we've accomplished together in this time. Your career has taken off. And when we're officially together, I'll make sure all of Sydney society knows you're my woman." Clara leaned against the hallway wall, her legs trembling. Oliver wasn't just planning to leave her. He was meticulously strategizing how to do it in a way that would minimize any damage to his social or professional reputation. "Next week is the Prada Foundation event," Oliver continued. "I'll take you as always. And who knows? It might be a good chance to start talking more openly about our future together." But Clara went back to the bedroom with a broken heart. She lay in the bed she shared with a man who saw her as an obstacle to his happiness, a burden he needed to get rid of carefully so as not to harm his image. For the first time since she discovered the betrayal, Clara felt something more than pain. She felt rage, a cold, calculated fury that began to burn in her chest like a slow but steady fire. Oliver thought she was too fragile to handle the truth. He thought she was too dependent to survive without him. He thought he could manipulate the situation to come out looking like the good guy who worried about a problematic wife until he found a suitable solution. Clara smiled in the darkness. Oliver was about to find out just how wrong he was about the woman he had married. Clara woke up the next morning with a mental clarity she hadn't felt in years. For the first time since the discovery, she didn't cry. She didn't feel the familiar weight of depression. Instead, she felt something much more powerful: determination. While Oliver was showering and humming, probably planning another rendezvous with Saskia, Clara made a plan. She wouldn't confront him immediately. That would give him control of the situation, allowing him to manipulate the narrative in his favor. Instead, Clara would do something Oliver would never expect. She would transform herself into the woman he always said she wasn't sophisticated enough to be. She started by looking up all the social events Oliver had attended without her over the past 2 years. She discovered an impressive pattern: charity galas, exhibition openings, business dinners, luxury product launches. All events where an elegant wife's presence was not only expected, but essential to maintaining social status. Oliver had taken Saskia to every single one of these events, sometimes introducing her as a friend or colleague. But Clara knew from the comments she found on social media that everyone in his circle knew exactly what the nature of their relationship was. The most shocking discovery came when Clara accessed Oliver's WhatsApp through their shared iPad. The conversations with Saskia revealed not only the extent of the betrayal, but also the cruelty with which Oliver talked about Clara. "She's getting a bit sus," Oliver had written to Saskia 3 weeks ago. "She asked why I never take her to company events. And what did you say?" Saskia had responded. "The truth. That she wouldn't know how to behave, that she'd be lost among sophisticated people, that it's better for everyone if she stays home doing her little translations. Poor thing. Must be awful to be married to someone who's ashamed of you. It's not shame, my love. It's realism. Clara comes from a very simple family. She never learned the social codes necessary for our world. It's like taking someone who only knows cheap cask wine to a tasting of a 95 Grange." Clara read these messages, feeling a mix of hurt and outrage that surprised her with its intensity. Oliver wasn't just cheating. He was contemptuous of her. He despised her origins, her simplicity, her authenticity. But there was more. "Sometimes I think how different it would be if I had met you first," Oliver had written to Saskia. "You understand my world in a way Clara never will. When we're together at events, I feel proud. People congratulate me. They admire my good taste. With Clara, I always feel like I'm doing her a favor." "When are you going to leave her officially?" Saskia asked. "I'm waiting for the right moment. Clara doesn't have many resources of her own. If I ask for a divorce now, it could cause problems. She could hire expensive lawyers and try to harm me professionally. It's better to prepare the ground slowly. What kind of preparation? Make her realize it's not working herself. Get her to initiate the breakup. That way, I'm the guy who tried to save his marriage, and you're the woman who helped me through a difficult separation. The calculated coldness of Oliver was breathtaking. He had planned every detail of their marriage's destruction to preserve his reputation and maximize his chances with Saskia. Clara printed these conversations and hid them away. Then, she began the second phase of her plan, the transformation. Her first stop was Pitt Street Mall. She entered a Chanel boutique and asked to speak to the most experienced personal shopper. "I need a complete makeover," Clara told Marina, a stylish woman in her 50s who sized Clara up with professional eyes. "What kind of transformation, madam?" "I want to be unrecognizable. I want to become the kind of woman who commands a room when she walks in." Marina smiled. "May I ask the occasion?" "Revenge," Clara replied without hesitation. They spent 3 hours in the boutique. Clara bought 2 cocktail dresses, a formal gown that cost more than 6 months of her income as a translator, Manolo Blahnik shoes, bags, and accessories. She spent $40,000 from their joint account, money whose existence Oliver probably thought she didn't even know about. Then she went to Sydney's best beauty salon. She asked for a complete hair and makeup change. "Cut all the length off," she told the hairdresser. "I want a short, modern, powerful bob, and highlights. I want to look like a woman who doesn't take excuses." The hairdresser, a theatrical man named Francesco, was thrilled with the project. "Oh, darling, you have an incredible bone structure. With the right cut, you'll be devastating." 5 hours later, Clara looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman she saw. The short hair framed her face, highlighting her green eyes and cheekbones. The highlights gave her a sophisticated glow she had never had. But the most important transformation was internal. For the first time in years, Clara felt beautiful, powerful, and worthy. She returned home with several shopping bags. Oliver hadn't arrived yet. He was probably with Saskia. Clara hid all the purchases in the guest closet and went back to her investigation. She discovered that the following week was the Art Foundation's Winter Gala, one of the most important events of the social season. According to Oliver's history, it was a sure thing he'd be taking Saskia. Clara researched the event and found that it was possible to buy individual tickets for $800 without a moment's hesitation. She bought a ticket with her personal credit card. That night, when Oliver came home at 10:30 with the familiar scent of a woman's perfume on his clothes, Clara was in the kitchen, making tea, seemingly the same submissive wife as always. "How was your day, my love?" Oliver asked, kissing her distractedly on the forehead. "Quiet," Clara replied. "I worked on some translations. And you? How was the all-day meeting?" Oliver didn't notice the irony in her voice. "Exhausting. Those German clients are always so demanding." Clara smiled to herself. On Saskia's Instagram, posted 3 hours ago, there was a photo of a champagne glass with the caption, "Celebrating new projects with my love." The location showed the Westin Hotel in Sydney. "Oliver," Clara said, with the most innocent voice she could muster. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why don't you ever take me to your company events? I'd like to meet your colleagues, to understand your work better." Oliver was visibly uncomfortable. "Clara, we've talked about this. They're very formal events. You'd feel out of place. But what if I didn't? What if I wanted to try?" "Clara," Oliver sighed impatiently. "Look, I'll be honest with you. These events are for making connections, for impressing clients, for maintaining professional relationships. The people there talk about contemporary art, international politics, and complex business deals. Would you understand what they're talking about?" Every word was a deliberate humiliation. But Clara maintained a neutral expression. Do you think I'm too stupid to follow a conversation about art or politics? It's not a matter of intelligence, Clara. It's a matter of environment. You weren't raised in that world. It's like taking someone who has never heard an opera to the opera house. The person might be very smart, but they'll feel lost. Clara pretended to understand and agree. You're right, she said softly. I really wouldn't know how to behave in those sophisticated environments. Oliver seemed relieved that she had accepted the explanation so easily. Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that, my love. Everyone has their place in the world. Yours is here, looking after our home, doing your translation work. That's what you're good at. That night, Clara lay next to Oliver, smiling in the darkness. In a week at the Art Foundation Gala, Oliver would find out just how wrong he was about the woman he had married. And Saskia would find out what happens when you try to steal a husband from a woman who has finally decided to stand up for herself. Clara woke up the following Monday with the determination of a general preparing for the final battle. She had exactly 6 days to transform completely, and every hour would be used strategically. Her first stop was a prestigious business school in Sydney, where she enrolled in an intensive crash course on social protocol and etiquette. The course, which normally lasted a month, was condensed into 5 days for a select group of executives who needed to quickly learn the nuances of elite behavior. Ms. Evans, said the professor, Countess Isabella, a woman in her 60s with an aristocratic bearing and piercing eyes. I'll be blunt. You have 5 days to learn what people in high society learn their whole lives. There will be no time for pleasantries or niceties. Let's get down to business. Clara absorbed every piece of information like a sponge. She learned about Sydney's social hierarchy, how to identify important people by the way they dressed and behaved, and the appropriate conversation topics for each type of event. She learned about wine, not just the names, but the stories behind the labels, the production regions, the important vintages. The difference between someone who belongs in high society and someone who pretends to, the Countess explained, is not in what you know, but in how you react to what you don't know. A truly educated person never tries to impress with knowledge they don't have. They ask intelligent questions and listen with genuine interest. Clara practiced conversations about contemporary art, international politics, and the global economy. She learned the difference between confidence and arrogance, between elegance and ostentation. In parallel with the course, Clara went daily to Sydney's most exclusive gym, where she hired a personal trainer who worked with models and actresses. Madam, said Marco, the trainer, you have an incredible body structure. With the right work, in 1 week, you'll have the posture of an international model. They worked intensely on her posture, her walk, and her gestures. Clara learned to enter a room as if she owned it, to greet important people without looking intimidated, and to smile in a way that showed confidence without seeming arrogant. On the 4th day of her preparation, she did something she never thought herself capable of. She hired a private investigator. She wanted to be absolutely sure of every detail of Oliver's double life before the final confrontation. The investigator, a former cop named Roberto Ferrer, delivered a report that exceeded even Clara's worst expectations. Oliver had not only been cheating on her with Saskia for 18 months, he had created a complete parallel life. He had a rented apartment where he spent the nights he said he was working late. He had a separate bank account where he deposited part of his annual bonuses. He had even hired a divorce lawyer 3 months earlier. But the most devastating information was on the last pages of the report. Oliver had promised to marry Saskia in June of the following year. He had already booked a church and a 5-star hotel for their honeymoon. He was planning to ask Clara for a divorce right after the holidays, claiming irreconcilable differences and that they had grown in different directions. The lawyer had already developed a strategy to minimize the division of assets, exploiting the fact that Clara had not contributed significantly to the couple's wealth. Clara laughed bitterly as she read this information. Oliver really thought she was a helpless fool who would accept any crumbs he offered. On the day before the gala, Clara made her final preparations. She visited a high-end jeweler, not to buy, but to learn. She spoke with the manager about the most exclusive pieces in the collection. She learned about the brand's history, the materials used, and the most important designers. "You have a refined taste," the manager commented when Clara showed knowledge about a limited collection of rare diamonds. "Do you work in the jewelry field?" "No," Clara replied with an enigmatic smile. "I'm just a woman who's learning to value beautiful things." That night, on the eve of the gala, Oliver came home earlier than usual. He was visibly nervous, checking his phone constantly. "Are you all right, my love?" Clara asked with feigned concern. Yeah, it's just, tomorrow there's an important company event. I might be late." "What kind of event?" Oliver hesitated for a moment. "A charity gala. Very formal. Very boring." Clara nodded understandingly. "Right. I hope everything goes well." That night, Clara took a long bath and looked at herself in the mirror for the last time as the old Clara. The woman she saw was already completely different from the one who had discovered the betrayal a week earlier. The modern haircut, the straight posture, the determined gaze, but most importantly, the confidence that radiated from within. On the morning of the gala, Oliver left early, saying he had meetings all day before the event. Clara knew he was preparing with Saskia, helping her get dressed, buying flowers, maybe even a special piece of jewelry for the occasion. Clara spent her day at an exclusive spa, a relaxing massage, a facial, a perfect manicure and pedicure. At 5 in the afternoon, she went to her beauty salon for the final hairdo and professional makeup. "My goodness," said Francesco, the hairdresser. "You're unrecognizable. You look like an international actress." The makeup artist, a French woman named Celine, who worked with celebrities, created a sophisticated but natural look, luminous skin, elegant eyes, and classic red lips that perfectly complemented the dress Clara would wear. At 7 in the evening, Clara was ready. The black Armani gown fit her now toned body to perfection. The Manolo Blahnik shoes gave her height and elegance. The Bottega Veneta bag was a final touch of discreet sophistication. But the most important accessory Clara was wearing was invisible. Her new self-confidence. In the taxi on her way to the Art Foundation Gala, Clara mentally reviewed all the information she had absorbed in the past week. She knew Oliver would be there with Saskia. She knew it would be a public confrontation. She knew their lives would never be the same after that night. But for the first time in 8 years of marriage, Clara wasn't afraid. She was ready to show Oliver, Saskia, and all of Sydney's high society who the real Clara Evans was. The taxi stopped in front of the futuristic building. Clara got out of the car with the grace of a princess and walked towards the entrance, where photographers were documenting the guests' arrival. When Clara appeared at the top of the stairs, there was a noticeable moment of silence. Conversations stopped, heads turned, and cameras clicked. Clara smiled slightly and descended the stairs with the confidence of someone who had always belonged in this world. Oliver hadn't seen her yet. She spotted him across the main hall, elegant in his tux, laughing at something Saskia had said. Saskia was dazzling in a golden dress that probably cost more than a car. But Clara noticed something that her intensive training had taught her to see. Saskia was trying too hard. The jewelry was excessive for the occasion, the makeup was a little too heavy, and the dress was too loud for a cultural event. Saskia was beautiful and elegant, but there was a touch of new money in her presentation that truly sophisticated people would spot immediately. Clara, on the other hand, had learned the golden rule of elegance. Less is more. She headed to the bar and ordered a Negroni, not because she particularly liked it, but because she had learned it was the preferred drink of Sydney's elite. While she waited, she complimented the bartender on her accent and commented on the building's architecture. It was at that moment that she felt a fixed gaze on her. She turned and saw Oliver, standing a few meters away, with an expression of absolute shock. For a moment, Clara thought he hadn't recognized her. When he finally did, the expression changed from confusion to utter disbelief. Clara smiled serenely, took her drink, and walked towards the husband who had spent months planning to leave her. The war was about to begin. Oliver was completely frozen as Clara approached. His eyes scanned his wife's transformed look, as if he were seeing a ghost. His tuxedo, which had always made him look so imposing, suddenly seemed ordinary next to the devastating elegance Clara radiated. "Good evening, Oliver," Clara said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her voice was calm and controlled, with a sophisticated tone he had never heard. "Clara, what are you doing here?" Oliver stammered, looking nervously to the side where Saskia was talking to a group of women near the art. "The same as you, I imagine. Appreciating contemporary art, meeting interesting people, participating in the cultural life of Sydney." Clara took a sip of her Negroni, maintaining direct eye contact. "Or is there a problem with me being here?" Oliver tried to compose himself, but he was visibly flustered. "No, of course not. It's just that you never showed an interest in these kinds of events." "How interesting." Clara tilted her head slightly. "I never showed an interest? Or you never gave me the chance to show it?" Before Oliver could respond, Clara was interrupted by a female voice behind her. "Oliver, babe, who's your friend?" Saskia had approached and was now next to Oliver, wrapping her arm around his with possessiveness. She was even more beautiful in person than in photos, but Clara immediately noticed what her intensive training had taught her to see. Saskia was spectacular, but there was something artificial about her beauty. The lips were a bit too full, the chest clearly enhanced, the fake tan that didn't match Sydney's winter. "Saskia, this is Clara," Oliver said, swallowing hard. "Clara." Saskia extended her hand with a condescending smile. "Nice to meet you. Do you work in the arts?" Clara shook her hand firmly, maintaining her elegant smile. "I'm a literary translator. And you, Saskia, must be the model who has been going out with my husband for the past 18 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Oliver turned as pale as a ghost. Saskia pulled her hand back as if Clara had given her an electric shock, and some people nearby stopped talking to pay attention. Your husband?" Saskia looked from Clara to Oliver with increasing confusion. "Oliver, you told me you were divorced 2 years ago." "Divorced?" Clara laughed softly. "How curious. Oliver, when exactly did this divorce happen? It must have been while I was asleep, because we were still married when you left home this morning." Oliver tried to intervene desperately. "Clara, please, let's talk in private." "Why?" Clara raised her voice just enough to attract even more attention. "For 18 months, you spoke in private with Saskia about our marriage. You told her we were divorced, you spent our money to support her, and you took her to events where you said I would be out of place. I think we've had enough private conversations, don't you? Now, A noticeable circle of people was paying attention to the conversation. Clara recognized some faces from the social photos she had studied. Important business people, artists, and journalists. Saskia was visibly confused and annoyed. Oliver, what is she talking about? You told me your ex-wife was a simple woman who lived in the country and that you no longer had contact. Ex-wife? Clara feigned surprise. Oliver, did you tell your mistress I'm your ex-wife? How interesting, considering that last night you slept in our bed, in our house, after kissing me and saying, "Good night, my love." Oliver was visibly sweating. Clara, you're making a scene. Me making a scene? Clara laughed with genuine bitterness. Oliver, for 8 years you made me believe I wasn't sophisticated enough to appear in public with you, that I was too simple, too rural, too inadequate for your social circle. She paused dramatically, looking at the audience that had formed. You know what I discovered this week? The problem was never that I wasn't sophisticated enough. The problem was that you needed a diminished woman to feel superior. Saskia was beginning to understand the situation, and her expression changed from confusion to fury. Oliver, are you married? You made me a married man's mistress for 1.5 years? Saskia, let me explain. Explain what? Saskia was losing her elegant composure. That you've been lying to me since day one? That you've made me look like an idiot at every event where you introduced me as your girlfriend? Clara watched the scene with growing satisfaction. Saskia was doing exactly what she had hoped, losing her emotional control in public, revealing her true nature beneath the veneer of sophistication. Actually, Saskia, Clara intervened with a soft voice, you never looked like an idiot. You looked exactly like what you are, a woman who accepts being supported by a married man in exchange for designer handbags and expensive trips. The insult was delivered with such elegance that it took Saskia a few seconds to fully process it. When she understood, her reaction was explosive. Who the hell do you think you are to insult me? Oliver told me everything about you. A failed woman who never achieved anything in life besides translating insignificant little texts. Insignificant little texts? Clara smiled with genuine superiority. Saskia, darling, while you were posting bikini photos on Instagram, I was translating Virginia Woolf and Gabriel Garcia Marquez for a major publisher. While you depended on my husband's money to maintain your lifestyle, I was building a respected career in the cultural field. Clara paused, looking Saskia up and down with elegant disdain. You know the fundamental difference between us. You are an accessory, beautiful, decorative, but easily replaceable. I am the protagonist of my own story. Saskia tried to respond, but Clara hadn't finished. Clara turned to her husband, who was clearly in shock. You told Saskia I was inadequate for events like this, that I wouldn't know how to behave in society, that I wouldn't understand conversations about art, politics, or culture. Clara gestured elegantly. Well, here I am at the same event as you, talking about contemporary art, with people you consider important, wearing Armani, drinking a Negroni, behaving exactly like any other sophisticated woman here. She stepped closer to Oliver, lowering her voice, but keeping it audible to everyone around them. You know what this proves? That I was always capable of belonging to this world. You are the one who needed to keep me small to feel big. You are the one who needed a diminished wife to justify your need for a mistress who would inflate your ego. Oliver tried one last time. Clara, don't you get it? I get it perfectly. Clara interrupted him. You're a coward. A man who doesn't have the courage to own his choices, who lies to 2 women simultaneously, who builds his self-esteem on the humiliation of others. She turned to Saskia, who was visibly trying to control her tears of rage and humiliation. And you, darling, are exactly the kind of woman who accepts a man's crumbs because you don't believe you deserve the main course. You were content to be an option, to be introduced with half-truths, to be kept like an expensive doll. Clara drank the rest of her Negroni and placed the empty glass on a passing tray. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to continue enjoying this magnificent evening. After all, this is exactly the type of event Oliver always said I wouldn't know how to appreciate. Clara walked away with the elegance of a queen, leaving behind a completely destroyed Oliver and a tearful Saskia. For the rest of the night, Clara was the center of attention. She spoke with diplomats about literature, with art critics about the influence of modern architecture, and with business people about cultural opportunities. She received 5 invitations to future events, 3 job offers, and 2 business cards from elegant men interested in getting to know her better. Oliver and Saskia left the event separately, both publicly and irreversibly humiliated. A final word of value. 3 weeks later, Oliver showed up at the penthouse, begging to talk. Clara received him with the same elegance she had shown at the gala. "You were right about everything," he admitted, his eyes red from days of no sleep. "I'm a coward. I destroyed the best thing in my life because of my own insecurity and arrogance." "Saskia left me," Oliver continued. "She said I humiliated her publicly, that she could never show her face in society again after what happened. And she was right." "Oliver," Clara said softly, "you taught me a valuable lesson about my own worth. Thank you for that." "Clara, can we try again? I've changed, No." The answer was firm, but not cruel. "You haven't changed, Oliver. You've just discovered the consequences of your choices. And I discovered that I can be happy without you. In fact, I'm happier without you." 6 months later, Clara was living in a trendy loft in Sydney's Surrey Hills, with a thriving career as a cultural translator and her own book about to be published. Oliver tried to rebuild his reputation, but the public humiliation at the gala had permanently marked him in Sydney's elite circles. Saskia moved to the Gold Coast, where she tried to restart her influencer career, far from the gossip of Sydney society. And Clara finally understood that true elegance doesn't come from expensive dresses or knowing about wine. It comes from the courage to know your own value and the strength to never accept less than you deserve. The sweetest revenge wasn't destroying Oliver publicly. It was discovering that she had always been extraordinary. She just needed to stop accepting the diminished version of herself that others tried to impose. Clara Evans not only survived the betrayal, she flourished. And she discovered that some women aren't born to be supporting characters in anyone's story. They are born to be the protagonists of their own epic lives. What are your thoughts on Clara's revenge? And what do you think happens next in her life? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to see more powerful stories, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel.